the aftermath of the Great War, Germany lay in ruins, not just physically, but spiritually. A nation once proud and powerful was humiliated, burdened with blame, and fractured from within. The Treaty of Versailles in 1919 imposed severe reparations and territorial losses, igniting resentment and a deep sense of betrayal among its people. Amidst this chaos and despair, a new ideology began to stir, one that promised order, strength, and revival. It preyed on fear, stoked hatred, and demanded loyalty. It was not born overnight, nor was it the vision of a single man. It was a movement rooted in the wreckage of war, nourished by economic collapse, and legitimized by a fragile democracy teetering on the edge. This is the story of how Germany, a modern nation at the crossroads of hope and despair, opened the door to fascism. To understand the darkness that followed, we must first explore the wounds left by World War I, the betrayal felt by its veterans, and the slow erosion of democratic ideals in the face of extremism. It all begins with the Treaty of Versailles in 1919. During the Paris Peace Conference, France and Great Britain, who were also greatly devastated by the war, wanted to take revenge on Germany. The treaty imposed severe reparations, territorial losses, and military restrictions, igniting resentment and a deep sense of betrayal among its people.
The Versailles Treaty forced Germany to return Alsace and Lorraine to France and give up its overseas colonies in China, the Pacific, and Africa to the Allied nations. It also had Germany give up its territory to Belgium, Czechoslovakia, and Poland. More importantly, under Clause 231, the War Guilt Clause, Germany had to accept complete responsibility for the war and was forced to pay several billion in reparations to the Allied nations. Of course, the Versailles Treaty wasn't popular and was viewed as extremely harsh. This outraged many Germans and created a revolutionary atmosphere in Germany, leaving the German government in a really tight spot against internal and external pressures.
Germany renounces in favor of the principal allies and associated powers all her rights and titles over her overseas possessions. Treaty of Versailles, Article 119.
Germany was left with no choice and signed the treaty. After losing about 13% of its territory and being cut off from markets and resources that previously supported its economy, Germany continued to attempt to pay the reparations as dictated by the Treaty of Versailles. In 1922, Germany requested to suspend their payments until they recovered economically, but the Allies refused. The German government attempted to fix their economic crisis by printing more money, but their plan backfired greatly.
By printing more money, Germany opened its doors to the devastating effects of hyperinflation. By late 1923, the German mark was virtually worthless. For example, a loaf of bread, which would normally cost 250 marks, was now priced at 250 billion marks. Middle class and working class Germans who had savings saw them become worthless overnight. In addition to Germany's economic crisis, hyperinflation also led to social and political unrest. Widespread poverty, unemployment, and hunger fueled anger and extremism, and many Germans lost faith in the Weimar Republic, the German government at the time.
Germany was able to recover somewhat thanks to loans from the U.S. and foreign investment. Unfortunately, in 1929, the stock market crashed and the Great Depression began, further deepening Germany's economic crisis. It quickly spread worldwide, especially to countries like Germany, since they were heavily dependent on international loans and trade.
The U.S. demanded that their loans be repaid, leaving even more disastrous consequences for an already fragile German economy. By 1932, around 6 million Germans were unemployed. Factories shut down, businesses went bankrupt, and industrial production dropped by over 40%. The middle class, already hurt by hyperinflation, lost even more savings and security, and a significant portion of the German population fell into poverty. The Weimar Republic struggled to provide welfare, illustrating a weak image for itself.
It was a country in which the Great Depression was unusually severe. Its population was divided by religion, class, and ideology. The experience of defeat in World War I had a radicalizing effect. Political extremism in the 1920s and 1930s, Do German Lessons Generalize by Alan de Bromhead, Barry Eichengreen, and Kevin H. O'Furcher.
By now, you've probably noticed a notable element that was involved in the augmentation of Germany's economic crisis, the German government, otherwise known as the Weimar Republic. After their poor attempts to relieve Germany from its economic burdens, many Germans lost faith in the Weimar Republic, and some even held it responsible for their defeat in World War I. Political instability, public distrust, and overwhelming external pressures ultimately led to its collapse.
Frequent changes in government and reliance on coalition policies made effective government difficult. They created a new proportional representation system of voting, which caused political instability, as it resulted in many different parties getting a small number of seats in the Reichstag. No one party had an overall majority, and they joined together to rule in coalitions. Each party within these coalitions had different aims, which led to disagreements on policy. This made the Reichstag difficult to govern, which caused for frequent changes in government. Those changes made Germany's political and economic problems difficult to manage.
The Nazis' rise to power was the final blow to the Weimar Republic, leading to its collapse. The Nazi Party became one of the biggest parties in the Reichstag, and Hitler was appointed chancellor in 1933. However, the Nazi Party's popularity did not grow overnight. When the movement first began in the 1920s, it was weak, small, and ineffective. Hitler was a highly charismatic figure who could captivate audiences with his speeches. His oratory skills were matchless. It was this strength that enabled him to stir nationalist sentiments and channel public anger towards perceived enemies, such as the Jews, communists, and Versailles signatories. Along with his charismatic leadership, Hitler was also a master of propaganda. His effective use of propaganda was crucial in spreading the Nazi Party's ideology and in controlling public perception of his enemies. He was able to manipulate the public into viewing him as Germany's strongest, decisive leader.
Hitler was able to exploit the public's desperation for a solution to the economic chaos and social unrest in Germany. He was able to manipulate the public into viewing him as some sort of higher being by promising to restore Germany's national pride, economic prosperity, regain lost territory, and create a strong authoritarian government. He capitalized on the economic and social conditions during this time by offering scapegoats like the Jews, communists, and even homosexuals. After he joined, the Nazi Party became incredibly racist and anti-Semitic.
Hitler's rise to power didn't rely solely on appealing to the public. There were, of course, opposing parties that rejected his ideologies. In these cases, Hitler used violence and intimidation to force his enemies into subordination, eliminate them, or terrify them into supporting him.
The Nazi Party's paramilitary organization was the Sturmbannführung, more commonly known as the SA. The SA was primarily responsible for disrupting the meetings of their political opponents and protecting the leading Nazis. Hitler then established the Schutzstaffel, or the SS. The SS would go on to police the Third Reich and terrorize anyone that aimed to threaten the Nazi ideology. The SA and the SS became the Nazi Party's symbol of terror.
Now that the Nazi Party was in power, it was time to establish the Nazi state, otherwise known as the Third Reich. It was a process that unfolded rapidly through a mix of legal manipulation, propaganda, violence, and fear. Over the next few years after becoming chancellor, Hitler eliminated opposition, outlawed other parties, and established a totalitarian state. Just a month after being appointed chancellor, a fire broke out in Reichstag. Many Germans saw it as a tragedy, but Hitler saw it as an opportunity to take down his political opponents through effective use of propaganda.
Hitler blamed the Dutch communists for the fire and used it as a pretext to claim that a communist uprising was underway. Hindenburg issued the Reichstag Fire Decree, which suspended liberties like freedom of speech, press, and assembly. This allowed the arrest for Hitler's political opponents, especially communists and socialists.
Now, with many opposition deputies arrested or intimidated, the Reichstag was now under Nazi control. The Nazis passed the Enabling Act, which permitted Hitler the power to enact laws without the Reichstag, effectively giving him dictatorial powers. This marked the legal end of parliamentary democracy in Germany. The rise of fascism in Germany was not the result of a single event, but the culmination of political instability, economic despair, and social unrest in the wake of World War I. Exploiting fear, uncertainty, and nationalism, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party offered a vision of restored greatness, one rooted not in unity or progress, but in exclusion, authoritarianism, and violence. By the time the world fully grasped the consequences of this ideology, it was already too late for millions. The Holocaust, the devastation of World War II, and the erosion of democratic institutions served as haunting reminders of what can happen when society turns away from truth, tolerance, and shared humanity. Today, the story of fascism's rise in Germany stands as a powerful warning. It reminds us that democracy is fragile, that hate can wear the mask of patriotism, and that silence in the face of injustice can pave the way for tyranny. To remember is not only to honor the victims, but to protect the future. This was Shadows of Power, Rise of Fascism in Germany. Thank you for watching.